Good day folks, Sean here from Air Photography. So in today's video, we're going to do a quick video comparison of the new Insta360 X3 against the previous generation, the X2. Now when it comes to upgrading to devices like this, sometimes it can be a difficult decision. It seems as technology moves on, the updates and the features that we get in between generations get littler and littler. But some people aren't quite sure whether it's justifiable to upgrade. And we see that with other tech as well. Every year we get new iPhones, new GoPros, and sometimes the new features don't really justify the cost of upgrading. You're almost better to wait to skip a generation and get the next year's model. The X3 is no different. Some of the features are not really appealing to everybody, whereas others are going to make it a no-brainer. They're definitely going to upgrade. So in this video, what we're going to do is kind of do a video comparison to see if there's any quality difference between the video that you capture. And I'll kind of do some commentary as we're watching the video and give you my thoughts. But first, before we get going here, let's just take a look at the physical size difference. You know, they are pretty comparable in size. The overall footprint is very similar. The new X3 is slightly thicker. Let's go ahead here and we'll check the weight difference. So we have it set to grams there. So you can see the X2 is 149 grams. And the X3 is 179 grams. So a little bit of weight difference there. So now I've already gone ahead and rendered out some comparisons, but I'll play you the full high-def version. Let's go ahead and we'll start playing it here. This first shot, basically, I have the two cameras mounted on the front of my e-bike. And, you know, for the most part, there's not a lot of difference. Now, the framing looks a little bit different because I did have to do some reframing, so it was hard to get it exactly. But for the most part, the stabilization looks very similar. I wouldn't really say that one is better than the other. If anything, you know, if you look at the vibrations in the X2, I think there's a little bit more vibration in that camera there. But both look pretty good. I wouldn't really say that there is one better than the other. So that first video was filmed in 360, so it was spherical, and what I did was reframe it to have me in center, and then exported it as a flat video. And like I said, there wasn't really a lot of difference. Now for the next two samples here, I was filming in single lens mode because a lot of people do like that feature, and that's where you really notice the difference. And this is the Field of View Plus on the X3, and I think Pro Mode it's called on the X2. So the stabilization is done in the app. There's no in-camera stabilization when filming in this mode. You get more flexibility when it comes to editing, but you do have to run it through the app or the desktop studio in order to get that stabilization. And you will notice here that the X3 does do a little bit better job at keeping things stable. So let's go ahead here and we'll play that now. You know, if you just look at it, you can see there's a color difference there as well. The X2 does look to be a little bit warmer. Nicer colors, I think, with the X3. But it just overall has a smoother feel to it. It looks a little bit more flowing. The X2 is a little bit kind of jittery almost, it seems. Now we're going to go on some pavement here, so it's not going to be as noticeable. But I think just in general it does look to be a little bit smoother overall. Now this next sample is where you can really notice the stabilization difference. This is where we're going to be using the in-camera stabilization capability. That's where you don't have to run it through the app or the desktop studio. You can just pull the memory card out and use it. One of the new features with the X3 is that it can now film in 4K in this mode. But you will notice a massive difference in stabilization. Again, I don't know if it's to do with the larger sensor or if it's just the technology that they have built into it with flow state, but you will notice a big difference here. We start out on some pavement, so it's not as noticeable, but once I go into a trail there, it's actually pretty bumpy, and that's where you can really notice it. So let's go ahead and we'll take a look at that now. Even on this pavement here, you can see that it does look a little smoother. There's just a little bit of a jitter to the X2, whereas the X3 looks nice and flowing. nice and smooth. But here in a minute I'm going to go off the pavement and onto a trail, and that's where you'll really notice it. Yeah, you can see right away once we get off that pavement, the X2 is quite jittery there. You know, both do a fairly decent job, but that X3 just is a lot smoother, a little bit more flowing. And again, you can see the color is a little bit more natural, it looks like, on the X3. The X2 is very warm. I do like the look better of the X3. But again, that can be just personal preference. Everybody has their own tastes when it comes to that. So that last clip where we're using in-camera stabilization, you can see that it's much better on the X3. So what I have here, I have both cameras mounted in a handheld rig, and I'm just walking around filming. And again, we'll just do a quick video comparison. So let's go ahead and we'll take a look at that now. I do like the color of the sky. It looks a little bit more vibrant in the X2 there. But I think the X3 does look a little bit more natural. I think the processing was a little maybe overdone on the X2. Again, you can see that it is quite a bit more warmer. And coming up here, it's actually kind of interesting because at some points on the X3, it looks like there's more detail in this tree here off in the distance. But in other instances, it looks like there's more detail in the X2. So it is kind of interesting depending on the light and the way the light's hitting the surfaces. So that was just some video samples of the X2 versus the X3 in different scenarios. Overall, the image quality was about the same. I wouldn't say one was better than the other. I think in some instances, the X3 does have a little bit more detail, but the X2 is definitely warmer. You could tell in those images. Both were rendered in the exact same settings. There was no editing done to it, just right out of the camera. But the stabilization on the X3 is definitely a little bit better. Not in every scenario. Like when you're filming in 360, I think they both do a pretty good job. They're pretty well almost neck and neck, I would say. But when it comes to single lens mode, especially when using the in-camera stabilization, the X3 does a much better job. If you are interested in the X3, make sure you stay tuned to my channel, as we will be covering more aspects of this camera as we go along. We're going to take a look at time lapses, hyperlapses, other features of this camera that make it appealing. I want to thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it and found it had value, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button. It's always greatly appreciated. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. And we'll see you in the next one.